I never imagined being dragged out of my own hotel like a criminal. The security guard's grip on my arm tightened as whispers filled the lobby. No one recognized me, their boss, in my casual clothes. They only saw a black woman who didn't belong in their luxury establishment. But minutes later, when I returned, the look on their faces was worth everything. The Grand Regent Hotel stands as a monument to luxury in the heart of Manhattan. Crystal chandeliers catch the late afternoon sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting prisms across the polished marble floors. The air carries notes of fresh lilies and lemon polish. Soft jazz floats through hidden speakers, creating an atmosphere of refined elegance that I in this moment. However, the beauty of the scene contrasts sharply with what's unfolding at its center. "Ma'am, I need you to leave. Now." The front desk manager's voice cuts through the ambient music. His name tag reads Ethan Cole, and his thin lips press into a dismissive line as he gestures toward a broad-shouldered security guard. Imani Grant stands her ground, heart pounding against her ribs. She's dressed in dark jeans and a navy blazer, comfortable travel clothes, not the power suits she typically wears in boardrooms. Her expression remains calm, but inside, disbelief churns into anger. "There must be some mistake," she says, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. "I have a reservation. We've checked. Twice." Ethan's tone drips with condescension. "There's nothing under your name, and you can't just loiter in our lobby." His eyes flick over her casual attire with poorly disguised disdain. The security guard, Darren, according to his badge, moves in, positioning himself at her side. Guests seated in plush armchairs nearby glance up from their phones and newspapers. A couple in matching designer outfits exchange looks of curiosity. "Sir, please." Imani tries once more, reaching for her phone to show the confirmation email. "If you'd just look at Darren, please escort this woman out." Ethan interrupts with a dismissive wave. The guard's fingers close around Imani's elbow. Not violently, but firmly, a grip designed to control, to assert authority. The touch sends a shock through her system. In 15 years of climbing the corporate ladder, through countless meetings where she was the only black woman in the room, she has never been physically handled like this. "Take your hands off me," she demands, but her voice catches. The guard tightens his hold. "Let's not make a scene," Darren mutters. Already steering her toward the exit, Imani's tote bag slides from her shoulder, crashing to the floor. The contents spill across the pristine marble. Her laptop, a leather portfolio with the Regal Hospitality Group logo barely visible. Her wallet, a tube of lipstick rolling toward a potted palm. The cold marble bites into her fingertips as she stoops to gather her belongings, dignity crumbling with each item she retrieves. The guard doesn't release her arm, forcing her to awkwardly scoop up her possessions with one hand. The jazz melody that once felt sophisticated now seems to mock her humiliation. The notes fade in her perception, replaced by the thudding of her pulse and the whispered comments from onlookers. Wonder what she did. Probably tried to use the facilities without being a guest. Always checking people who don't belong. A young Asian man behind the concierge desk, Lucas, according to his name tag, watches with wide eyes. He takes a half step forward, mouth opening as if to intervene, but Ethan shoots him a warning glance. Lucas freezes, conflict written across his face. Imani straightens, clutching her partially gathered belongings to her chest. The walk to the door feels endless. Each step echoes against the marble as hotel staff and guests watch her removal like a spectacle. "This is wrong," she says, her voice stronger now, fueled by mounting indignation. "You'll regret this." Ethan rolls his eyes. "We've heard that before." The massive glass doors loom ahead. Outside, yellow taxis zip past and pedestrians hurry along the sidewalk. Unaware of the injustice unfolding inside these walls, Darren pushes the door open with his free hand, the rush of city air hitting Imani's face as he finally releases her arm with a small shove that propels her over the threshold. "Don't come back," he says flatly before stepping back inside. The heavy door swings shut behind her with a final, decisive thud. Through the glass, she watches Ethan nod approvingly at Darren before they both turn away. Already forgetting her, Imani stands alone on the sidewalk, the strap of her bag digging into her shoulder, her breathing shallow with shock and anger. Pedestrians stream around her like water around a rock. No one notices the storm brewing in her eyes, inside her pocket. Her phone buzzes, her executive assistant checking in. A cold clarity washes over her as she recalls exactly who she is and what she's about to do. Have you ever been judged solely by your appearance? Dismissed before anyone bothered to learn your name, your position, your power? Stay with me to see what happened next when this CEO decided to teach her own hotel staff a lesson they'd never forget. 2 hours before the humiliation in the lobby, Imani Grant stared out the window of her private car as it merged into Manhattan traffic. The skyline stretched before her, a monument to ambition and achievement, values she embodied to her core. Her reflection in the tinted glass showed a woman of striking confidence. High cheekbones, intelligent eyes that missed nothing, and the subtle smile lines of someone who had earned every victory. Ms. Grant, we'll reach the Grand Regent in about 20 minutes, her driver announced. Perfect, Imani nodded, then returned to reviewing the quarterly performance reports on her tablet. The Grand Regent stood as the flagship property of Regal Hospitality Group, her company. The numbers looked strong on paper. Occupancy rates up 12%, customer satisfaction climbing, revenue exceeding projections. Yet something didn't sit right. Point 3. Customer complaints had crossed her desk in the past month. Not formal grievances, just comments mentioned in passing to corporate staff. A black executive had noted feeling unwelcome at check-in. A young professional woman of color described being scrutinized while waiting for colleagues in the lounge. Small moments, easily dismissed by middle management, but to Imani, they formed a pattern worth investigating, which is why today, Imani Grant, CEO of Regal Hospitality Group, overseer of 38 luxury properties across 4 continents, was arriving unannounced at her flagship hotel dressed in jeans and a casual blazer, her hair pulled back in a simple style instead of her signature sophisticated updo. The path to this moment had been anything but simple, born to working-class parents. In Atlanta, Imani grew up watching her mother clean rooms at a mid-tier chain hotel. At 18, needing to help with family expenses while putting herself through community college, she took a front desk job at that same establishment. "You're good with people," her supervisor had noted during her first performance review. But, "remember your place." That phrase, "remember your place," followed her throughout her early career. It came in subtle forms, being asked to fetch coffee during meetings despite her management position, having white colleagues explain her own initiatives back to her, watching less qualified men receive promotions she'd earned. Yet Imani persisted. Night classes became a business degree, which became an MBA. Assistant manager became manager, which became regional director. Each step required twice the effort of her peers. Each promotion came with whispers, diversity hire, or affirmative action pick. Each achievement was questioned until proven beyond doubt. By 40, Imani had transformed herself into an industry force. Her turnaround of struggling properties caught the attention of Regal's board during their CEO search. Her appointment made headlines, not just for her vision or track record, but because she became one of only 3 black women leading major American corporations. The statistics remained stark. Of 55 women CEOs at top companies, only 2 others looked like her. Less than 1% of all chief executives at major firms were black women. Imani felt the weight of that reality daily, the responsibility to excel not just for herself, but for those who would follow. "Ms. Grant, we're 5 minutes out," her driver called. Imani slipped her tablet into her bag and reached for a compact mirror. With practiced movements, she removed her signature pearl earrings and bold lipstick. She pulled a simple white t-shirt from her bag and slipped it under her blazer, replacing the silk blouse she'd worn to morning meetings. The transformation was subtle but effective, from polished executive to casual traveler. Someone who might be a mid-level professional at best. Someone the Grand Regent staff would need to evaluate based solely on appearance and behavior, without the benefit of knowing her title. "Stop 2 blocks from the entrance," she instructed. Her driver, "I'll walk the rest of the way." "Are you sure, Ms. Grant? I could drop you at the side entrance if you—" "The main entrance, like any other guest." Her tone was gentle but firm. "And remember, you'll wait around the corner until I text." The car pulled over. Before stepping out, Imani took a deep breath. This wasn't just about testing customer service. It was about ensuring that her vision of genuine hospitality extended to everyone who walked through those doors, regardless of appearance or background. Meanwhile, inside the Grand Regent, Ethan Cole was having a challenging day. 38 years old with 15 years in luxury hospitality, Ethan prided himself on maintaining proper standards. His grandfather had managed the plaza during its heyday, and he'd grown up on stories of catering to royalty and turning away the wrong element. Front desk isn't just about checking people in, his grandfather had told him. It's about keeping up appearances. Some people belong, others don't. Today, Ethan's irritation simmered beneath his perfect professional smile. His morning had included dealing with a plumbing issue on the 5th floor, placating an upset celebrity guest, and reprimanding a housekeeper for a missed cleaning detail. His mood hadn't improved when corporate sent another diversity training reminder, the third this quarter since that woman took over as CEO. Everything has to be so politically correct now, he muttered to a colleague as he straightened his already impeccable tie. 20 years in this business, and suddenly we need lessons on how to treat people. Across the lobby, Darren McCarthy monitored the entrance with practiced vigilance. At 43, the security guard carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd seen it all. Former military, he appreciated clear hierarchies and firm boundaries. The Grand Regent paid him well to maintain order and prestige, to ensure that nothing disrupted the carefully cultivated atmosphere of exclusivity. "Hey, Lucas," Darren called to the young concierge nearby. "Keep an eye on that group by the bar. They're getting loud." Lucas Tan, 22 and 4 weeks into his training period, nodded eagerly. Fresh out of hospitality school, Lucas represented everything Ethan found annoying about the new generation. Enthusiastic, idealistic, and too concerned with inclusivity rather than tradition. Lucas had actually read all the corporate memos about the new CEO's vision. He'd studied the company website, memorized the leadership team, and genuinely believed in Ms. Grant's mission to balance luxury with accessibility. Her journey from front desk to CEO inspired him. It meant someone like him, the son of Malaysian immigrants, might have a real future in this industry. "Did you see the new quarterly update?" Lucas asked Darren, holding up his phone with the company newsletter. "There's an article about Ms. Grant visiting properties incognito too." "Kid, less reading, more working," Darren interrupted. "Nobody cares about corporate newsletters." The revolving door spun, and Imani Grant entered her flagship property as an anonymous guest. The cool air washed over her face, carrying notes of the hotel's signature scent, a custom blend of sandalwood and citrus that cost thousands to develop. Crystal chandeliers reflected light across marble floors so polished they mirrored the opulent surroundings. Her trained eye noted everything. The fresh flower arrangements, changed twice daily according to protocol, the precise positioning of lobby furniture, angled for both privacy and security, the subtle movements of staff, attentive but not hovering. The doorman glanced at her casual attire and wheeled suitcase, then quickly shifted his attention to a white couple in designer clothes. Entering behind her, no greeting, no offer to assist with her bag. Strike one. Imani moved toward the reception desk where Ethan stood conversing with a colleague. He noticed her approach but continued his conversation for several more seconds before acknowledging her presence. "Strike 2. Checking in?" he asked, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Yes," Imani replied. "I have a reservation under Nicole Graham." Ethan typed the name with efficiency, then frowned. "I don't see a reservation under that name. Are you sure it's for today? And at this hotel?" The slight emphasis on "this hotel" carried a weight Imani recognized immediately. The implication that perhaps she had confused this luxury establishment with something more suitable for her. "I'm certain," she said, pulling out her phone to show the confirmation email. "I made it last week." Ethan barely glanced at the screen. "Our system shows nothing, and we're fully booked tonight." Imani knew this was false. As CEO, she had checked the occupancy reports that morning. The hotel was at 78% capacity with multiple rooms available in every category. "Perhaps you could check again," she suggested. "Or speak with a manager?" Ethan's smile tightened. "I am the manager on duty. And as I said, we have no reservation under that name and no availability." He gestured vaguely toward the exit. "There's a Marriott about 6 blocks south that might have rooms." Across the lobby, Lucas looked up from assisting another guest. His eyes widened as he recognized Imani's face from the company newsletter. He had studied the executive profiles during training, fascinated by the leadership team's backgrounds. There was no mistaking her, even in casual clothes. "Mr. Cole," Lucas called, hurrying over. "I think." "Not now, Lucas," Ethan cut him off sharply. "I'm handling this situation." Lucas hesitated, glancing between his manager and the unrecognized CEO. "But sir, I think this guest is..." "Lucas, return to your station." Ethan's tone left no room for argument. The young concierge retreated, throwing an apologetic look toward Imani. She gave him a nearly imperceptible nod, acknowledgement of his attempt and permission to stand down. This experiment needed to play out. Imani decided to push once more. "Perhaps there's been a technical error with the reservation system. Could you check under Regal corporate bookings?" Ethan's jaw tightened. He made a show of typing, though Imani noticed his fingers barely moved across the keyboard. "Nothing under corporate either. As I mentioned, we're fully committed tonight." His gaze flicked to the line forming behind her. "If you'll excuse me, I have guests waiting." The dismissal was absolute. Imani stepped aside, moving to a seating area near a large potted palm. She pulled out her phone, pretending to search for alternative accommodations while actually texting her assistant. Phase 1 complete. Discrimination confirmed. Proceeding to Phase 2. From her vantage point, she observed the lobby operations. Ethan warmly welcomed the well-dressed couple who had entered behind her. The doorman who had ignored her rushed to assist an elderly white man with his bags. A group of executives, all white men in tailored suits, laughed loudly by the bar without staff intervention, while a black family was quietly asked to keep it down when their child giggled at the elaborate fountain. Each small interaction revealed a pattern, subtle but undeniable. Differential treatment based on appearance, race, perceived status. Everything the company's new inclusivity policies were designed to eliminate. Lucas appeared beside her chair, offering a glass of water. "Can I get you anything else while you..." "Wait, ma'am." The slight pause before "ma'am" told Imani he knew exactly who she was. "Just this water is fine, thank you," she replied softly. "I'm sorry about the confusion with your reservation," he added, voice lowered. "If there's anything I can do to help..." "You've been very kind," Imani assured him. "I appreciate that more than you know." As Lucas returned to his station, Ethan watched the interaction with narrowed eyes. He murmured something to Darren, who began moving in Imani's direction with purpose. The discrimination building up to this moment reveals a pattern many face daily. The small indignities, the assumptions, the thousand cuts of prejudice that accumulate beneath the polished surface of spaces claiming to welcome all. For most people, there's no recourse, no way to prove the slight differences in treatment, no power to demand change. But Imani Grant isn't most people. And what happens next will change everything at the Grand Regent Hotel. 20 minutes into her observation, Imani watched Ethan and Darren exchange another glance. Their silent communication carried a familiar weight, the unspoken agreement between authority figures who've decided someone doesn't belong. She had seen this before. At department stores where security followed her through aisles, at restaurants where hosts tried seating her near kitchens despite empty tables by windows, at industry events where she was mistaken for waitstaff despite wearing designer suits. The look said, "Problem identified, removal imminent." Darren straightened his tie and began walking toward her with deliberate steps. 6'2" and broad-shouldered, his presence was designed to intimidate. Ethan followed a few paces behind, clipboard in hand as if to provide official backing for what was about to happen. Imani set down her water glass, heart rate accelerating despite her outward calm. This was the moment she had anticipated yet hoped wouldn't come. The culmination of biases she had fought throughout her career, now playing out in her own establishment. "Excuse me, ma'am," Darren said, towering over her seat. His voice carried just enough volume to draw attention from nearby guests. "Is there something I can help you with?" The question seemed innocent, but his tone made it clear this wasn't an offer of assistance. Imani remained seated, meeting his gaze directly. "I'm simply waiting while I sort out my accommodation situation," she replied evenly. "Your colleague at the desk was unable to locate my reservation." Darren's expression didn't change. "I understand, but the lobby is reserved for registered guests of the hotel. I had a reservation, Imani emphasized. There seems to be a technical issue with your system. Ethan stepped forward, clipboard held like a shield. Ma'am, as I explained, we have no record of your booking, and we're at capacity tonight. The lobby isn't a public waiting area. A couple seated nearby looked up from their champagne, their conversation pausing as they watched the scene unfold. At the concierge station, Lucas stood frozen, distress evident in his wide eyes. I've been here less than half an hour, Imani noted calmly. I'm making alternative arrangements. Is that a problem? It is when we have guests complaining about non-residents loitering, Ethan replied. Imani glanced around. No one appeared remotely bothered by her presence except the two men confronting her. Who exactly complained? Ethan's mouth tightened. That's confidential. Hotel policy requires all non-guests to conduct their business and move along. Hotel policy. Imani raised an eyebrow. I wasn't aware the Grand Regent had a policy limiting how long someone could sit quietly in the lobby. We certainly do, Ethan insisted, though both knew he was inventing this rule on the spot. And you've exceeded that time. Darren took a half-step closer. Ma'am, we're going to have to ask you to gather your belongings and exit the premises. Several heads turned now. The confrontation had become a spectacle. A mother pulled her curious child closer. Two businessmen at the bar watched with detached interest. An older couple frowned in disapproval, though whether at Imani or her treatment remained unclear. Imani straightened her spine, still seated. I'd like to speak with the general manager. He's unavailable, Ethan replied too quickly. And the decision has been made. You need to leave now. And if I don't? Imani asked, voice steady despite the anger building beneath her composed exterior. Darren's hand moved to the radio at his belt. Then we'll be forced to escort you out. Please don't make this difficult. The implied threat hung in the air. Imani had a choice. Reveal herself now or see how far they would take this. Professional curiosity and personal principle made her decision clear. She needed to know the full extent of the problem before she could fix it. Very well, she said, reaching for her bag. I'll go. Relief flickered across Ethan's face. He hadn't expected compliance. But as Imani rose, she deliberately took her time gathering her things, maintaining eye contact with him throughout. For the record, she said, voice pitched to carry just far enough, I find this treatment appalling. I've done nothing wrong. Ethan's jaw clenched. Let's not create a scene. I'm not creating anything, Imani replied. I'm simply stating facts. Darren's patience evaporated. That's enough. His hand closed around Imani's upper arm, fingers digging into her blazer. Let's go. The physical contact sent a shock through her system. In 25 years of professional life, no one had manhandled her like this. The violation crossed a line from discrimination to assault. Take your hands off me, she demanded, voice sharp with authority. Instead of complying, Darren tightened his grip and began steering her toward the exit. Imani pulled back instinctively, causing her tote bag to slip from her shoulder. It hit the marble floor with a heavy thud that echoed through the now silent lobby. Contents spilled everywhere. Her laptop skidding across polished stone, a leather portfolio opening to reveal company documents, her wallet, phone, and personal items scattered like evidence of her humiliation. Now look what you've done, Ethan muttered, as if she had deliberately created the mess. Imani attempted to bend down to retrieve her belongings, but Darren's grip prevented her from doing so properly. She was forced to awkwardly crouch, one arm still in his control, the other frantically gathering her possessions. Please, she said, anger giving way momentarily to practical concern. My laptop. Grab your things quickly, Darren instructed, maintaining his hold. You're causing a disruption. Lucas finally broke from his frozen state, rushing forward. Let me help, he offered, kneeling to collect papers that had scattered near the reception desk. Stay at your post, Ethan barked at him. This isn't your concern. But sir, Lucas began. Now Lucas, the young man retreated, conflict written across his features. He clutched the papers he'd already gathered, uncertain what to do with them. Imani managed to stuff most items back into her bag, but Darren's impatience had reached its limit. That's enough, he declared, pulling her upright. The rest can be mailed to you if you leave contact information. This is outrageous, Imani said, voice rising despite her efforts to remain composed. I have done nothing to warrant this treatment. You were asked to leave and refused. Ethan replied coldly. That's trespassing. Trespassing. Imani let out a short, incredulous laugh. In a hotel lobby? After attempting to check in with a valid reservation? Her resistance seemed to harden Darren's resolve, with one hand firmly gripping her arm and the other now pressed against her back. He began physically propelling her toward the exit. The indignity of the moment burned through Imani's professional veneer. Conversations throughout the lobby had stopped entirely. All eyes followed the spectacle of a well-dressed black woman being forcibly removed. Some guests appeared uncomfortable, others curious, a few even satisfied, as if justice were being served by ejecting someone who didn't fit their image of who belonged. This is discrimination, Imani stated clearly, wanting witnesses to hear. You haven't asked anyone else sitting in this lobby to prove they're guests. Keep moving, Darren muttered near her ear. They passed the concierge station where Lucas stood helpless, still holding the papers he'd retrieved. His eyes met Imani's briefly, an apology without words. Near the door, an elderly woman touched her husband's arm. Should we say something? She whispered, but he shook his head slightly, unwilling to intervene. The massive glass entrance loomed ahead, the revolving door spinning as actual guests entered and exited. Outside, afternoon sun gleamed off taxi roofs and the busy rhythm of Manhattan continued, oblivious to the injustice occurring within these walls. At the threshold, Imani planted her feet, causing Darren to jerk to a stop. She turned toward the lobby, aware that dozens of eyes were on her. This moment, humiliating as it was, had purpose. She was experiencing firsthand what others faced without her power to rectify it. I want everyone here to remember what you witnessed today, she announced, voice clear and controlled despite the circumstances. Remember how quickly assumptions were made. Remember how force was used without cause. That's enough, Darren growled, pulling her backward. Imani locked eyes with Ethan, who stood several feet away, arms crossed defensively. You're going to regret this, she told him, each word precise and weighted with promise. More than you can possibly imagine. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face, the first crack in his self-righteous facade. But he recovered quickly, dismissing her words with a scoff. Save the threats. They don't impress anyone. With a final push, Darren propelled Imani through the door and onto the sidewalk. The transition was jarring, from the climate-controlled hush of the lobby to the cacophony of horns, voices, and footsteps that made up New York's soundtrack. Don't come back, Darren warned before retreating inside. The door swung shut with a soft hydraulic hiss that belied the violence of the moment. Through the glass, Imani could see Ethan giving Darren an approving nod. Lucas stood nearby, distress evident in his posture. A few guests continued to stare, their expressions ranging from discomfort to indifference. Most had already returned to their conversations, the disruption forgotten as quickly as it had occurred. Imani stood motionless on the sidewalk, the weight of what had just happened settling fully upon her shoulders. Pedestrians streamed around her, absorbed in their own worlds. No one noticed the storm gathering in her eyes, the rigid set of her jaw, the calculated breathing as she worked to master the emotions threatening to overflow. The humiliation was real, a visceral ache that radiated from her core. But stronger than the humiliation was something else, determination, clarity, purpose. She reached into her pocket for her phone, fingers trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the intensity of her resolve. The screen lit up with notifications, emails demanding responses, meetings requiring confirmation, decisions awaiting her attention, reminders of exactly who she was, of the power she wielded. Imani Grant, CEO of Regal Hospitality Group, owner of the Grand Regent Hotel, had just been thrown out of her own establishment. The irony might have been amusing if it weren't so infuriating, so revealing. She straightened her blazer, adjusted the strap of her hastily packed bag, and took one deep, centering breath. Then she began typing a message to her executive assistant. Inside those doors, they believed they'd rid themselves of an unwanted presence. They had no idea she was about to return, not as a supplicant seeking accommodation, but as the most powerful person in their professional universe. And she was going to rain consequences down upon them like they'd never imagined. 15 minutes after her humiliating ejection, Imani Grant stood half a block from the Grand Regent, her composed exterior masking the fury within. She had moved away from the immediate entrance to regroup, positioning herself where she could observe the hotel while remaining unnoticed. Her driver, Marcus, approached cautiously after receiving her text. "Miss Grant, are you all right?" "No, Marcus, I'm not." Her voice was steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her system. "But I will be very soon. I need the executive portfolio from the car, the one with the HR files and board contact information." Marcus nodded, hurrying to retrieve the requested items. When he returned, Imani was already dialing a number on her phone. Megan Chen's office, answered a crisp, professional voice. "This is Imani. I need to speak with Megan immediately." There was a brief pause. "Of course, Ms. Grant. Connecting you now." Megan Chen had served as Regal Hospitality's HR director for 6 years. Efficient, discreet, and unflinchingly ethical, she had been one of Imani's strongest allies during the leadership transition. "Imani, is everything okay?" Megan asked, picking up instantly. "You sound. I need you at the Grand Regent now." Imani cut in, her tone leaving no room for questions. "Bring termination paperwork." "For cause." A beat of silence followed. "How many?" "2. Possibly more, depending on what I discover in the next 30 minutes. Text me the names if you have them," Megan replied, already in motion judging by the sounds in the background. "I can be there in 20 minutes. Ethan Cole, front office manager. Darren McCarthy, security. Both just physically removed me from our flagship property because they decided I didn't belong there." Another beat of silence, this one heavier. "They didn't recognize you. They didn't bother to see me at all," Imani corrected. "Just another black woman they could dismiss without consequences. They're about to learn how mistaken they were." "I understand. I'll have everything ready. Meet me in the lobby in 20 minutes, Imani instructed before ending the call. Marcus stood nearby, holding the leather portfolio she'd requested. "What else can I do, Ms. Grant?" Imani took the portfolio, her movements deliberate as she extracted her CEO access badge and official business cards, heavy stock with gold-embossed lettering that caught the afternoon sunlight. "Wait here," she said. "This won't take long." She straightened her blazer and smoothed her hair. The casual traveler, who had entered the hotel earlier, was gone. In her place stood the chief executive, back straight, chin lifted, eyes focused with laser-like intensity. Even in jeans and a simple top, her transformation was remarkable. Power wasn't in the clothing, it emanated from within. 20 minutes, she repeated to Marcus, then turned and walked purposefully back toward the Grand Regent. Inside the lobby, normal activities had resumed. The disruption of Imani's removal had already faded from the collective consciousness of guests and staff alike. Ethan stood at the front desk, speaking quietly with a colleague. Darren had resumed his position near the entrance, scanning arriving visitors with practiced suspicion. Lucas remained at the concierge station, his usual enthusiasm dimmed by what he had witnessed. He sorted brochures with mechanical movements, his mind clearly elsewhere. The heavy glass door swung open. Imani Grant re-entered her hotel, her stride confident and unhurried. The difference was immediate and striking. Whereas before she had been just another visitor, now she moved with the absolute certainty of someone who owned every inch of the space. Lucas noticed her first. His eyes widened, a mix of relief and apprehension crossing his features. He straightened, hands dropping the brochures he'd been organizing. Darren turned next, registering her return with disbelief quickly hardening into irritation. He stepped forward, hand moving toward his radio. "Ma'am, I thought I made it clear." Imani didn't break stride. She didn't even acknowledge his presence as she walked past him toward the reception desk. Her focus remained fixed on Ethan, who had yet to notice her approach. "Mr. Cole," she called, her voice carrying across the lobby with commanding clarity. Ethan turned, annoyance flashing across his face as he recognized the woman he'd had removed. "You again?" "Darren, stand down, Mr. Cole." The authority in her tone froze him mid-sentence. Confusion crossed his features. "Excuse me." By now, Darren had moved to flank her, but something in her demeanor made him hesitate to touch her again. Guests nearby sensed the tension, conversations quieting as attention shifted to the unfolding scene. Imani reached the front desk, and placed her portfolio on the counter. With deliberate movements, she extracted a business card and placed it face up before Ethan. "Perhaps this will clarify things," she said evenly. Ethan glanced down reflexively. The blood drained from his face as he read the embossed lettering. Imani Grant, Chief Executive Officer, Regal Hospitality Group. His mouth opened and closed without producing sound. He looked from the card to Imani's face, recognition and horror dawning simultaneously. Ms. Grant, he finally managed, voice barely audible. A hush fell over the nearby staff and guests. Someone gasped. Lucas pressed a hand to his mouth, eyes wide but gleaming with something that looked remarkably like satisfaction. "Yes, Mr. Cole. I am Imani Grant." Her voice remained measured but carried throughout the now silent lobby. "CEO of Regal Hospitality Group and owner of the Grand Regent Hotel." Darren took an involuntary step backward, the realization of what he had done, who he had physically manhandled, hitting him like a physical blow. His complexion paled beneath his tan. "Ms. Grant, I had no idea," Ethan stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "If I had known who you were, that's precisely the problem." Imani cut him off. "You shouldn't need to know who I am to treat me with basic dignity and respect." She reclaimed her business card, sliding it back into the portfolio with precision. "I came here today to experience our hotel as an ordinary guest would." What I discovered was appalling. More staff had gathered now, drawn by the commotion and frozen in place by the revelation. The bell captain, housekeeping supervisor, and several front desk agents formed an impromptu audience, their expressions ranging from shock to dismay. "You denied the existence of my reservation, which was confirmed and in the system," Imani continued, her voice gaining strength. "You dismissed me without basic courtesy. You invented policy violations to justify removing me." And then, her gaze shifted to Darren. "You physically grabbed me and dragged me out of my own establishment." Darren's eyes fixed on the floor, unable to meet her gaze. Ethan's hands trembled visibly as he gripped the edge of the counter for support. "Ms. Grant, please," he began, desperation edging his voice. "I can explain. I'm not interested in explanations," Imani replied. "I witnessed your behavior firsthand. I experienced your prejudice personally. No explanation can justify what happened here today." The lobby doors opened again as Megan Chen entered, carrying a slim briefcase. She moved directly to Imani's side, her presence adding institutional weight to the confrontation. "This is Megan Chen, our HR director," Imani informed the stunned employees. "She's here because actions have consequences." Megan nodded professionally to Ethan and Darren before opening her briefcase and extracting 2 folders. Understanding dawned in Ethan's eyes. "You can't be serious," he whispered, panic rising. "Over a misunderstanding." "This wasn't a misunderstanding," Imani corrected him. "This was discrimination. This was profiling. This was a fundamental violation of everything our company stands for." She turned slightly, addressing the gathered staff as well as the 2 men facing termination. "Regal Hospitality exists to provide exceptional service to all guests, not just those who look a certain way or dress expensively or fit your personal image of who belongs in luxury spaces." Lucas had moved closer, watching the scene unfold with rapt attention. Other employees exchanged nervous glances, perhaps wondering if they too had committed similar offenses that might now come to light. "Effective immediately," Imani announced. "Both of you are terminated for cause." The words hung in the air with devastating finality. A collective gasp rose from the onlookers. Ethan's face crumpled, the full impact of his career implosion hitting him all at once. "You can't," he began, but Megan interrupted smoothly. "Mr. Cole, Mr. McCarthy, these documents outline the terms of your termination." She placed a folder in front of each of them. "Please surrender your employee badges and access cards immediately." Darren moved first, silently unclipping his security badge and placing it on the counter. His hands were steady, but his jaw worked with suppressed emotion, anger, shame, or both. Ethan hesitated longer, as if unable to process the speed with which his professional life was unraveling. "Ms. Grant, please," he tried once more. 15 years with this company. 15 years during which you should have learned better," Imani replied. Her tone softened slightly, not from sympathy, but from recognition of the human impact of her decision. This isn't vindictive, Mr. Cole. It's necessary. The behavior you displayed today has no place in this organization. With trembling fingers, Ethan finally removed his name badge and access card, placing them beside the termination documents. His shoulders slumped in defeat. Security will escort you to collect personal belongings from your lockers, Megan informed them, gesturing to two uniformed guards who had appeared near the entrance. After that, you will be escorted from the premises. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The very security team Darren had commanded would now remove him just as he had removed Imani as the two men were led away. The lobby remained hushed. Ethan walked with his head bowed, shame radiating from his posture. Darren maintained rigid composure, though his clenched fists betrayed his emotional state. Near the door, Ethan paused and turned back. I truly am sorry, he said, voice breaking. Imani met his gaze steadily. I hope you learn from this, she replied. Not just about me, but about how you see and treat all people. The glass doors closed behind them, marking the end of their careers. At the Grand Regent, a collective exhale seemed to pass through the remaining staff. Imani turned to address the assembled employees. Her voice carried authority but also warmth, the leader rather than the avenger now. Today was difficult, but necessary, she began. What happened here reflects a culture that needs correction. I expect every person who works for Regal Hospitality to uphold our core values: excellence, integrity, and respect for all. The staff listened with rapt attention, many nodding in agreement or understanding. Judge people by their character and actions, not their appearance, Imani continued. That is the standard I expect at all our properties. Her gaze found Lucas among the group. She gave him a subtle nod of acknowledgement, recognition of his attempt to intervene earlier. The young man straightened, pride replacing his earlier distress. As the impromptu gathering dispersed, Imani remained at the center of the lobby, the heart of the hotel she owned, but had been deemed unworthy to enter just 30 minutes earlier. The power dynamic had completely reversed. Where she had been vulnerable, she now commanded. Where she had been dismissed, she now decided fates that I in that moment. She reflected silently. I wasn't just standing up for myself, but for everyone who's ever been judged by appearance rather than character. For every person who entered a space, only to be told they didn't belong there. For every professional whose credentials were questioned because they didn't fit someone's narrow image of leadership. The justice of the moment didn't erase the sting of the initial humiliation, but it transformed it into something meaningful, a catalyst for necessary change, a powerful statement about who truly belonged and who truly decided. As Ethan and Darren disappeared through the revolving doors, the Grand Regent lobby remained suspended in stunned silence. Staff exchanged wide-eyed glances, processing the swift consequences they had just witnessed. Then, unexpectedly, a slow clap began. An older woman in a tailored suit, the same guest who had watched Imani's humiliation earlier, stood from her seat in the lounge area, applauding with deliberate emphasis. Others joined, the applause spreading through the lobby like ripples in water. Some guests nodded in approval, others raised their glasses in silent salute. That was incredible, one man told his companion loudly enough for others to hear. About time someone took a stand. Imani acknowledged the support with a gracious nod, though the approval of strangers wasn't her goal. The structural change mattered more than the momentary validation. Still, the spontaneous response confirmed what she already knew. Many people recognized injustice when they saw it, even if they rarely witnessed its correction. The general manager, Jonathan Pierce, arrived breathlessly minutes later, having been called back from an off-site meeting. His face registered alarm as Megan briefed him on what had transpired. He approached Imani with visible apprehension. Ms. Grant, I cannot begin to express how deeply sorry I am. He began, sweat beading on his forehead. Had I known you were visiting, that's exactly the point, Jonathan, Imani interrupted calmly. No one should be treated differently based on whether they're recognized as important. The standards should be consistent for everyone. Jonathan nodded rapidly. Yes, of course. Absolutely right. I take full responsibility for the failures in our team's conduct. Good, Imani replied. Because we have significant work ahead. I'll need a complete audit of customer service practices, hiring patterns, and complaint records by the end of the week. By evening, what had begun as an internal company matter exploded into public discourse. A hotel guest had captured part of the confrontation on their phone, both the initial ejection and Imani's triumphant return. The video, posted with the caption, "Black CEO kicked out of her own hotel, then returns to fire racist staff," accumulated millions of views within hours. Major news outlets picked up the story by the next morning. Business publications framed it as a leadership case study in accountability. Social justice advocates highlighted it as a rare instance of immediate consequences for discrimination. Morning shows debated whether Imani's response had been proportionate or excessive. Hashtag Imani Grant trended on multiple platforms. Comments ranged from supportive, "Queen behavior," "Crown," to critical, "Couldn't she have given them a second chance?" to reflective, "This is what happens when marginalized people gain power to address their own mistreatment." That at Regal Hospitality's headquarters, the board convened an emergency meeting. While some members expressed concern about potential backlash, most recognized the incident had actually enhanced the company's reputation for integrity. "The optics couldn't be better," the marketing director noted. "This shows we live our values, not just print them in brochures." The company issued a measured statement the following day. "Regal Hospitality Group confirms an incident occurred at our Grand Regent property involving CEO Imani Grant. 2 employees were terminated following behavior inconsistent with our core values and service standards. We are using this as an opportunity to reinforce our commitment to creating welcoming environments for all guests regardless of appearance, race, gender, or background. We appreciate the public's interest and support as we continue this important work." For Ethan Cole and Darren McCarthy, the consequences extended far beyond losing their jobs. Their names and faces circulated throughout the hospitality industry. Job applications received polite rejections. Former colleagues distanced themselves. Their professional reputations, built over decades, collapsed in a single afternoon. Ethan eventually found work at a budget hotel chain, starting again at entry level. Darren left security altogether, moving into warehouse management where his previous actions wouldn't follow him as closely. Both men's stories became cautionary tales. In hospitality training programs nationwide, Lucas Tan experienced a dramatically different trajectory. 3 weeks after the incident, Imani invited him to headquarters for a meeting. Nervous but excited, he arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in his best suit. "Lucas," Imani greeted him warmly, "I wanted to personally thank you for showing integrity when it mattered. You tried to do the right thing in a difficult situation." "Thank you, Ms. Grant," he replied, shoulders straightening with pride. "I just wish I'd tried harder to stop what happened." "Sometimes witnessing and remembering is its own form of action," she assured him. "But I didn't bring you here just to thank you. I'm implementing a new management training program focused on inclusive leadership. I'd like you to be among the first participants." Lucas's eyes widened. "Really? But I've only been with the company for character matters more than seniority." Imani interrupted gently. "We're promoting you to assistant front office manager at the Grand Regent, with enrollment in our executive development track." The transformation at Regal Hospitality extended far beyond personnel changes. Within a month, Imani implemented comprehensive reforms throughout the organization's 38 properties. A secret visitor program dispatched people of various backgrounds to evaluate staff interactions. Mandatory training addressed both obvious and subtle forms of bias. Hiring practices were revised to prioritize diversity at all levels. Customer feedback systems specifically tracked inclusivity metrics. New protocols eliminated subjective belonging judgments for lobby visitors. The initiative, branded internally as Excellence for All, became a model studied by other hospitality groups. Though costly to implement, the program paid dividends in improved customer satisfaction, reduced complaints, and positive industry recognition. 6 months after the incident, Imani stood in the exact spot where she had been confronted and removed. The Grand Regent lobby looked similar physically, but operationally, everything had changed. A more diverse staff moved efficiently through their duties. The atmosphere felt genuinely welcoming rather than exclusionary. She watched a group of young professionals, 2 Black women, an Asian man, and a white woman, enter and settle in the lobby seating area to wait for colleagues. No one questioned their presence or made them feel unwelcome. The scene brought a quiet satisfaction more meaningful than any viral moment. The pain of that humiliation turned into purpose, Imani reflected. What happened to me happens to people every day, but most don't have the power to demand change. I do. Later that evening, speaking at an industry leadership conference, Imani shared her experience publicly for the first time. When I was thrown out of my own hotel, I had two choices: treat it as a personal insult or recognize it as a systemic problem requiring systemic solutions. I realized my position meant nothing if I couldn't use it to create change, not just for myself, but for everyone who has ever been judged by appearance rather than character. The audience sat in rapt attention as she continued. We focused so much on training staff to recognize important people. But true excellence means treating everyone as if they matter, because they do. Luxury shouldn't be exclusionary. Quality service shouldn't depend on race, gender, or outfit. And leadership means nothing if it doesn't create spaces where everyone belongs. Her words resonated beyond the ballroom, circulating through social media and professional networks, sparking conversations in boardrooms and break rooms alike. The incident that began as a humiliation transformed into a movement for accountability and change. That if you've witnessed or experienced discrimination, share your story in the comments. Together we can expose these moments that often happen behind closed doors. Your voice matters, whether you're a CEO with power to fire those responsible or someone still fighting to be seen and respected. Change happens when we refuse to accept the status quo, when we demand better, when we hold power accountable. Join the conversation. Your story could be the catalyst for the next transformation point. 1 year later, Imani Grant stands in the exact spot where Darren's hand once gripped her arm. The Grand Regent's lobby gleams under the same chandeliers, but everything else has transformed. She watches a young black woman in casual clothes enter, receive a warm greeting, and settle comfortably in the lounge area without a single questioning glance. The Imani incident, as it became known throughout the industry, prompted a wave of internal audits at hotel chains nationwide. Competitors implemented their own anonymous testing programs. Industry publications now rank hotels on inclusivity metrics alongside traditional luxury ratings. More profoundly, 3 major hospitality groups appointed their first executives of color following Regal's soaring performance under Imani's leadership. The narrative shifted from diversity as obligation to diversity as competitive advantage. For Imani personally, that day of humiliation crystallized her purpose. The quarterly reports show record profits, but the true measure of success walks through the doors every day. Guests of all backgrounds experiencing genuine welcome rather than conditional tolerance. Some lessons come at great cost, Imani reflects, gazing across her transformed domain. The question is whether we use that cost to purchase real change.